The Harry Potter franchise is a massive, sprawling collection of both individual and overarching stories that weave themselves into perhaps the best film series of all time. Whether or not that's true, however, it cannot be denied that these films had an immense impact on the generation that grew up with them, as well as really anyone who views them at any time. And for me, it was no different. It only took me a week to obsessively binge-watch all 8 movies, each one being a first watch, mind you, and there were definitely the highs and definitely the lows. Prisoner of Azkaban is all it's hyped up to be, and Alfonso Cuarón's take on the franchise is technically far more superior than really any films to follow. The Half-Blood Prince is also up there among my favorites, and in my opinion, it's probably the most underrated Harry Potter film we got. But despite all these amazing films that we were gifted with, there's one that stands out as my favorite. It's not the normal opinion, and I'm probably the only person I know with this in my number 1 spot, but anyway, I think the best Harry Potter film is The Deathly Hallows Part 1. Now yes, there are a lot of liberties that David Yates wants you to take when viewing this film. It's the first in a 2-movie pair, which obviously means that the resolution is minimal at best. Along with that, most of the movie, well, pretty much all of the movie, takes place away from Hogwarts, which is different than every film before it. But what this movie boasts is something that no other film in the franchise has quite come close to outside of perhaps Half-Blood Prince. It's easily the most human and character-driven Harry Potter film we've gotten. For some, it'll be boring and idle to watch our main characters go around camping, which is understandable, I guess, but for me, in a way, that's where the beauty lies. This movie isn't all about bombastic action sequences or kid detective plotlines. Instead, it's a meditative look into the psyches and emotions of the characters we've come to love over the previous 6 films. Take, for example, the growing romance and conflict between Hermione and Ron. There's tons of peaceful and really beautiful moments between the two, just doing simple things like playing the piano or skipping rocks. Stuff like that doesn't seem super important, but in the long run, it massively contributes to the character side of things, which is in my opinion the most important part of any long-running franchise. For further proof of this, look no further than something like Solo: A Star Wars Story. It's no doubt a solid film with some fantastic action set pieces and an engaging story, but it ultimately fails to live up to most of the other films in the series because it lacked memorable characters. That's why Deathly Hallows Part 1 is such a surprisingly fresh breath of air 7 films and 9 years into a franchise. It takes the people we care most about, them being Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and puts them into an environment where they can grow, both as pieces of a plot and as people in general. At the end, when Ron comes back, it signifies a transformation from his long-running sense of selfishness and short temperament. Him saving Harry and destroying the most emotionally destructive Horcrux yet shows that he's completely accepting of whatever role is necessary for him to take in order to save Hogwarts and really the whole world of magic and wizards that he's grown up in. As for Hermione, she goes through a rollercoaster of a ride throughout the movie. Not only does she have to shoulder most of the problem-solving load out of the trio, but she also has to deal with the person that she really and truly loves up and leaving halfway through. This puts an even bigger strain on the journey going forward, and it's a fully packed emotional ride right from that moment on. And even though she acts angry and kinda needlessly frustrated when Ron does return, it's clear that it's a nuanced sense of anger, and that on the inside she's still immensely relieved. Now, discussing the main and most focused on character of the entire franchise, Harry also goes through a strong character change during the film, and arguably more so than he does in Deathly Hallows Part 2, but that's an argument for a different time. Regardless, Harry ends up going from being independently ambitious and constantly putting the safety of others ahead of his own, in a way that seems rather somewhat vain than selfless, to realizing that this isn't a battle that he has to fight alone, and beginning to invest a bit more in the ever-so-valuable friends he has. And in a way, his entire character and journey up to that point, including pretty much everything since we first met him in The Sorcerer's Stone, is fully realized in the film's finale, and weighs his entire impact on him whenever Dobby makes his fitting last remarks.
Nice to be with friends.
It's an extremely tender and gut-wrenching moment, and it carries a boatload of emotional weight. But at its core, it's really a rock-solid representation of how desolate and tormenting the whole saving the world quest can really turn out to be, and more notably, how immeasurably important it is to keep those you love close, your friends, which brings the entire human aspect of the film full circle. Along with all these crucially evident character moments we get, the entire aesthetic and feel of the film really lends itself to the character and relationship-driven side of the story. David Yates and cinematographer Eduardo Serra make sure to visually demonstrate the mood and atmosphere in pretty much every scene. For moments like Hermione and Ron skipping rocks, they went for a soft and peaceful effect with the sun out and it being early morning. For moments like Harry and Hermione revisiting Godric's Hollow, there's a tense, dark, and cold mood set by the snowy nighttime environment. Finally, and most fittingly to the whole tone of the film, the scene of Dobby's death is blanketed by an overcast gray sky, which is no less than a perfect creative choice for one of the most emotionally tinged moments in the entire franchise. All this really shows how much care went into the vast color palette and beautiful camera work involved in the making of the film. Final thing I wanted to bring up in the case study of Deathly Hallows Part 1 is a scene that everybody knows about but will never be appreciated enough: the Harry and Hermione dance scene. Out of all the beauty we saw, all the action-packed sequences and edge-of-your-seat moments, this might just be my favorite scene in all of Harry Potter. This has already been hyper-analyzed countless times, and there will be links to that hopefully in the description below, so let it suffice to say that what Yates did here is nothing short of spectacular. The editing, the sound mixing, the way the audio rises and falls to show the almost fantasized nature of it all, and even down to the song choice, everything is just so perfect. It's an extremely telling scene that shows really the entire effect the whole cast and crew was trying to go for in this film. When taking a step back and looking in perspective at the movie as a whole, Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 1 is a special movie as far as the Harry Potter series goes. It has its magic moments, its intense action sequences, its all too familiar detective story threads, but above all that, it's a distinctly human film. It explores the bleak and bitter nature of the society we've grown connected to over the years once the darkness rises to power. It expertly shows evil, corruption, and greed in all its mediums. But once again, it's a sense of humanity and hope that rises above all that. Because at its core, Deathly Hallows Part 1 is a beautiful rendition of a mantra that we've heard several times over the course of the series. Happiness can be found even in the darkest of times, if one only remembers to turn on the light.